Hey, it's Jordan with Status Coup. Happy to be joined by Tristan Martinez. He's a worker at Amazon's JFK 8 that won the historic first unionized Amazon in the country in 2022. My memory is fading at this point. So obviously there have been efforts since then. The Albany Amazon and another Staten Island warehouse that were unsuccessful. And since your victory, now there seems to be some division happening between original organizers of Amazon Labor Union, which obviously has Christian Smalls in the media and elsewhere as the figurehead. So why don't you tell people who don't know, there has been kind of a fracture or a split between you and some of the other original organizers from Christian Smalls and some of the original ALU organizers?
Well, yeah, I'm obviously a part of the Reform Caucus. I have been with Chris and Derek and them before we even started the union. I was there when we were planning the original walkout during COVID-19, and I got to say, with the walkout, a lot of their original organizers are members of the caucus now. Most of us who were there since day one don't like what we're seeing. And, we're taking action towards that, not just for ourselves, but for the workers in the building who believe what we believe is that, there hasn't been a lot of movement and, they're not liking the direction that the ALU is going in. So out of a response to the workers, that's where we're actively trying to change that.
And just so the audience understands, the ALU Reform Caucus is basically a group of the original organizers that were working with Christian and Derek to unionize, that have kind of been working separately, independently from Christian and others. Same goals, obviously, of getting the contract, but basically working separately because you didn't like the direction, to the point now where the Reform Caucus is filing a lawsuit to force an election to be held to possibly unseat Chris. So why don't you tell the audience, as much as you can, what prompted the lawsuit and why did you and others break off? What was happening in terms of the direction you guys not liking?
Okay. I just got to say that, we're not doing this lightly. We've exhausted every other internal possibility to deal with this. The break really started about 8 months ago, so we've spent this entire time just trying to work it out. Since then, we even take big steps forward lately, as in the ALU, the E-Board, they suggested mediation, which we agreed. They suggested a mediator by the name of Bill Fletcher, which after doing our own research, we agreed, a man of morals and, so we're like, okay, we agree with this. Like, we can have him. We set all these ground rules. We did all this. We set our ground rules. The ALU E-Board needed to set their ground rules. And just a couple of days before the mediation, they canceled. So just that was our last effort to really try to make it work.
You're saying Christian canceled.
The E-Board canceled, yes. We got an email saying that they took another vote and the mediation was denied.
And the executive board is Christian as president and others on the executive board.
Yes, and other such members. But I'm not even, to be honest with you, with Chris's travel plans, not even sure how many of these votes Chris is taking a part of.
So tell the audience who, might need to get caught up. You said it started 8 months ago. So what was going on in terms of Christian, the leadership that you and others, and I know many of you on the kind of Reform Caucus that are now suing to get an election potentially to unseat Chris, you were with him from day one. So what happened? What was he doing? Others with him that you felt was slowing down momentum or, harming momentum?
Well, I got to say, and I just want to point this out because this is a major point for the caucus. It is not just about, getting Chris out of office. It's about giving the workers at JFK the chance to choose their own leaders. Because at this point, the view of the caucus is that the building can grow to give a great contract fight. But to do that, efforts need to be focused within the building, and that is that was the main split for us. It was that we believe that the only way to get Amazon to come to the table is to, create a real strike threat in the building, organize the workers, get them involved, get them engaged, and that was what our focus is. And that is what our focus has been over these last 8 months, and to speak to what caused the split, it's exactly what we're saying now. It was the undemocratic processes of the ALU taking on other buildings without the membership in JFK having any kind of say, even though it impacts the organizing at our building. When we lost at ALB one,
just to be clear, when you say taking on, you mean going for other organizing efforts to unionize other buildings like Albany.
Well, not even going for, Chris, Chris had no method in which to vet these buildings or to see okay, do we actually stand a chance of winning this right now? Or should the organizers in that building have a little more time before we invest all this into their election? And so that was the kind of one of the first things that started some tension, because it was making organizing very hard, that we, were losing in other buildings because we were jumping into them too quick, not saying that we can't help other organizers, but, it's important that the ALU fights for this first contract. If you really want to help all of Amazon, this is what helps.
So it seems that obviously it was a Herculean effort to unionize JFK 8, which last time I was like 6,000 or 7,000 workers. But you guys and girls that are, wanting a change, you want to focus on now winning the real fight, which is getting that first contract before trying to take on all these other potential warehouses and trying to unionize them. It's kind of like we gotta officially win here and drag Amazon to the negotiating table and win a contract before trying to score victories elsewhere.
Well, it doesn't even need to be all that. It's just that the focus should be here. That's, if you really want to progress the labor movement, that's what it is. A first contract at an Amazon in the U.S. would be,
right,
I think, one of the greatest things, the things that we fought for, the thing that I've been fighting for ever since, we formed the ALU. And, seeing it go the direction that it was going in kind of made me lose faith a little bit. But, the Reform Caucus got together and, even workers in the building, because at the end of the day, that's what we're responding to, is the way the workers feel in the building. They feel like there's no presence, there's no movement. So all we're doing is giving those workers a platform to express their opinions. And what we've heard so far is that they want elections. They want to be able to choose their own leaders. And
right,
that's fair. That's something that we had promised them when we were organizing this election, and the division is just about the undemocratic ways that are taking place,
And to be clear, Christian Smalls, he's responded basically saying that the Constitution that you all, he claims, had agreed to, pushed off elections till after Amazon agrees to a contract, whereas the Reform Caucus, you and others, are saying that was never actually finalized as a constitution and should have had an election according to the Constitution in March of this year. So there's a dispute about when an election should be held. He seems to want it to be after you win a contract. He also, for his own reasons, feels that a strike at JFK 8 to force Amazon to the contract negotiating table would be a negative thing. He does not want to do a strike, he says, because it could alarm workers who fear, being fired.
Well, just to say, it's, and this is my own personal opinion, this is not the view of the caucus, so this is my own personal opinion, that I find it strange that you can think that about, the building that we won this historic thing at, but then still be supporting other strikes at other Amazons. If you don't think it's possible for our building, then you know what? You need to roll up your sleeves and get to organizing.
Right.
Because, even like consistent, like very in the movement organizers that, have advised us in the past tell us, you know what, it's our responsibility as organizers to get the building ready.
Mhm.
If you can't get your building strike ready, that's on you. You need to work harder as an organizer. And you know what? The Reform Caucus is willing to put in that effort and those hours to not only talk to the workers, but also support them and be like, okay, let's get this going. Let's get some movement about the things that you care about. At the end of the day, the e-board is accountable to the workers, not the other way around. So if the workers don't like what you're doing or don't like, or they're demanding something, it's up to the board to give those workers what they're asking for, because at the end of the day, you represent them. They're the people that made you and put you in this position of like life-changing stuff, which is when they voted for us in the election,
Right. And I should say, by the way, the Reform Caucus is about 40 organizers, so it's not just a few. It's a decent chunk of them. I also want to,
or committed organizers that represent and support and receive support from hundreds and hundreds of workers.
and I should say also, in fairness to what you're saying, I reporting on the ground at the Albany warehouse that was the third warehouse to try and unionize. I was told by organizers, to keep it real, it was a bit of a shit show from the people who worked at the Albany warehouse, who basically were saying that Christian and others from ALU were not there enough to actually talk to the workers in the warehouse, persuade them. When Christian actually was there, there were some things they didn't particularly like. And, they lost, I believe, by 200 votes. But essentially, Amazon was union busting so much, but there wasn't as much presence from Christian himself and other ALU organizers there to kind of counteract that union busting. And that union busting was effective because it convinced enough workers to vote no. So that kind of aligns with what you're saying. You guys are feeling you're just gunning for, scoring more yes votes without the proper infrastructure or organizing to get it done.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And can we talk about, can you also talk about, because I should, out of fairness, he told the New York Times the complaints are, quote, a ridiculous claim with zero facts or merit. He's also, suggested there's a racial element. I do know there's people in the caucus that are Black. So, I can't.
The whole caucus is very diverse. I myself am Puerto Rican, Vietnamese, all, and that claim was that's just ridiculous, honestly.
So let me drill down into another point, because I know from people I've spoken with, there's been issues with the amount of traveling he has done since the victory. I mean, let's just be honest. He kind of became a celebrity overnight, was on the Daily Show, was, at conferences and in media. And I saw him in Cuba and this and that. I can't get in his head. He from what I know, it was on his dime, not Amazon Labor Union. He was paying for it. But there's obviously issues with that. If he's also the president of the union, if he's traveling so much, he says he needs to fundraise for the union, then he's not there to lead a lot of the organizing efforts that you guys are saying are important to force Amazon to the table to bargain.
I gotta say, that is an issue, not just with, members in my building, but members in all buildings across Amazon. They don't like that. And for very obvious reasons. It's that, that being present is kind of the main point. You don't need to go yourself to represent or support something. Especially as, there's presidents of other unions that, they will send a representative, support. You don't need to personally go. And at the end of the day, you should always prioritize your own workers, your own union. It's great to show support, but if you're not in a strong position, how can you support others?
Mm-hmm. And what do you say to his claim that if he didn't, the union wouldn't have any money because the main fundraising was him traveling and soliciting donations?
It's not at all true. I got to say that we won Amazon with almost no funding. We beat them, I believe, with only spending about $100,000, which we fundraised in other ways. At the end of the day, unity for the workers is more important. And, we've received plenty of support. It's just that people want to see action. They don't want to see the president flying across the country, the world even, without ever seeing any of the people in his own building that he represents.
Mm-hmm. And can you kind of talk? Can you kind of talk about, because obviously the whole point of unionizing is to have a democratic workplace. I interviewed Christian, who said, Amazon workers would not respond. Amazon managers, executives would not respond to their requests or complaints. How has he responded before you guys broke off? Because obviously you brought these concerns to him originally. Was he receptive? Was there any interest in trying to meet you in the middle? How did that work out?
He was not at all receptive. Basically, when the new Constitution was presented, and I quote, "This is the structure. This is the Constitution. If you don't like it, get out." That was the voting process to approve the new Constitution. Mm. And I got to say, that also doesn't really matter so much, because even if, we go by their Constitution that they forced through, what we're doing is still important, because at the end of the day, we're still collecting these signatures on the petition from actual workers in JFK 8 that won elections. And I'm sorry to say, but I can't see any response that they would have where a democratic election is a bad thing. And I challenge anyone to think of one instance where they thought a democratic election is actually a negative thing to have at any time.
Unless they think they're going to lose.
Yes, exactly. I just can't see how anybody can say, "Oh, we don't want to have a democratic election because it's a good thing." Like, it doesn't really compute. That's like saying, because, to quote, I can't remember who said this, they made this connection, but it was actually very interesting. It's like, I believe it was Connor that actually said, he's like, the president of the United States would not just say, "Oh, let's not have elections because we're in the middle of a war right now, but let's just hold off." No, that's no excuse. If anything, times of hardship like that are when you need elections, because people need to feel like they're being listened to. And right now in JFK 8, people feel like they're not being listened to. Mm-hmm. So people that were anti-union, that voted against the ALU, are now signing the petition because, you know what, we have the union anyway. Now let's get stuff done.
Mm-hmm. And can you kind of talk about, obviously, Christian hasn't worked inside the warehouse in years, so you're working inside the warehouse. Is there, if you have people who voted no, who are now, all right, we have the union, let's drag Amazon to the negotiating table, is there more of a mood among workers now for new leadership? Obviously, this caucus, yes, but what's the feel on the ground? Do they want a new president? Do they think, Christian and the current executive board don't agree with their tactics? Because there's you and the 40 to 50 organizers, but then there's the rest of the warehouse. So
yeah, well, I just gotta say, we got over 800 signatures on the petition, and I gotta say, when we started them, and when I say 800 signatures, we got those very quickly. We only started collecting them for about a couple weeks, and then when the e-board wanted to mediate, we stopped collecting signatures of the petition just to kind of give them a chance, But at the end of the day, the petition is binding for us, because at the end of the day, these over 800 workers that signed, have now put their faith in us to represent what they believe is best for the union, and that is a democratic election. And not saying that Chris and Derek and them could not also run for office, but you know what? Make your case to the workers. Run for an election, as we should have done from the very beginning, as we promised workers from the very beginning.
Right.
Told them that there would be elections. And you know what? If they're feeling like the elections wouldn't have a good turnout, that's up to us. It is our job as the ALU to to reach people and bring them out to this election so their voices can be heard.
Mm-hmm.
There's no saying, oh, well, people aren't going to get that involved, so there's no point. No, it's our job to get them involved.
And let me ask you, because obviously one of the core differences in strategy is whether to go on strike. He doesn't feel that would be right for JFK. You think it's necessary. If you were to go on strike, is the Reform Caucus that you're part of, are you organizing so that obviously workers would have fear that they're living paycheck to paycheck, they can't afford to go on strike and lose money? Are you trying to organize some type of strike fund so that, they're making some money? Other unions have some form of health care for workers, maybe not their full health care plan, but some form of health care so that you could meet those, legitimate concerns of workers who, if they weren't afraid of losing their jobs and not providing for their families, would go on strike.
I definitely believe that all unions should have a strike fund. It's very important. It's something that should always be available to you, because that's honestly probably the biggest power that we as workers have today still. As to the caucus, preparing for a strike, at the end of the day, right now we're focused on getting these elections, and no strike would ever happen when, obviously without the authorization of the membership in the building first, but right now we're more about, getting this core unit together so we can start this contract fight. Because right now, the way we see it, there is no contract fight. You could send tweets to Amazon all day saying, come to the table, but without actions, it's never going to happen.
And just estimated, since you're there, what would you put it at? How often is Christian actually there? Obviously, he's not working there, but around on the premises, helping organize since you guys won. We talking 20%, 50% of the time, 70%?
It's talking about a 0.5% point. He's like, especially after we won, he was never around.
Well,
he was never around. We had that, he came around once and it didn't go so well. And then after that, done. Never there.
Gotcha. So, and I will say, obviously, the audience is seeing one person, but I do know other people part of your caucus who were extremely loyal to Christian from day one. So this does not seem like some type of coup to me out of malicious. You guys really believed in him for the most part, and so to do this, obviously, there's core issues at play.
At the end of the day, we're doing this because we believe that this is right and that this is the way to get this union a contract that Amazon workers were made history voting for. This is what we owe them. We owe them the chance to get this contract within the next 2-3 years, hopefully, very soon, would be the faster the better, which is why we want to get these elections out of the way soon, so that people can voice their opinion. Everybody can run. We're going to have, I believe, you need to have at least a minimum of 1 year at Amazon, So, once we do that, then we can start consolidating power, building a plan, giving the people structure, because that's what the workers want. Many workers want to get involved, but there's just not a structure that does that supports that for them. And we want to build that structure, but to do that, we need to be in a position to change things, so an election is the time to do that.
Right. Okay. Well, I have reached out to Christian, obviously, to be fair and give his side, but it sounds to me that this is less about interpersonal beef with Christian and more about strategy and feeling that if you're it was one thing to actually win, but if you're actually going to drag a $1 trillion company to the negotiating table when the government's certainly not pushing them, you feel like, you need a new strategy and a new leader. That's what it sounds like to me. I
feel like we need not just a new leader, but I feel like the workers need to see that we care about their opinions, that their opinions matter. They've been dealing with Amazon for years, a company that doesn't care how their workers feel about anything. So we created this independent union for exactly that these workers will always feel listened to and understood by people that know what they're going through. We're not trading one boss for another. That is not what this union is, and it never will be. Not as long as we're here to fight for the democratic process in this union. And
Gotcha.
I will also say that, just to point out that no matter what, even if going by this illegally adopted constitution, the process that we're using to call for elections is still completely within those guidelines. Because if you look on their website, there's an amendment procedure that requires the signature of 100 current Amazon workers to amend the Constitution. We have over 800 on an amendment to the Constitution that is also the petition for elections. So,
and
either
just
way,
so the lawyers with ALU and Christian dispute that it's an illegal constitution, but I get your point.
yeah,
I'm just trying to be fair. Right.
Yeah, either way, it's still valid. Whether going by the second or the third, we're still within our rights to demand elections, and workers are still within their rights to demand it and to petition for it and be heard for it.
Right.
So at the end of the day, that's what it is, and that's the way it's going to be. We're not going to stop until the workers get what we and they are asking for, which is fair democratic elections.
Well, it also, overall, the bottom line is when you have that historic victory, momentum is really important. Mm-hmm. You don't want to just kind of have a couple follow-up elections that you lose and then really nothing for a while. It
started to fizzle out. And honestly, I believe with all my heart that this is the thing to add that fire back to it, is to just get it going again, get everybody reinvigorated. Because honestly, that's what we need more than money. You could have 1 million, 2 million, 3 million, but if you don't have the support of the workers in the building, then you can't organize. And at the end of the day, it's worker power that got us here, and I believe that we shouldn't underestimate that.
And basically right now, your estimate based on being there is he does not have overall support among workers in the building.
Not even 1%.
Really?
Because even the new workers that have come in since the election, they know nothing about him. They've never met him, never seen him, never seen or talked to anybody that he's helped. So they just see him as the guy that dresses with the chains and flies all across the country that's supposed to be helping them. But when they get fired, when they get fired and written up, I'm like, who do they go to? Who's in the building? We are. And, we're there to support them, and that's what we're doing.
Gotcha. Thanks for taking the time. I'll update the audience as there's developments. Tristan Martinez, thanks a lot. Before we go, I wanted to make clear I did reach out to Christian Smalls, the president of Amazon Labor Union, to offer him a chance for an interview to give his side in response to the accusations and obviously the lawsuit made to force an election that was made by the 40 organizers that are part of the Reform Caucus. As of now, he did not take me up on the opportunity to do an interview over it. And his only response was, and I quote, my comment is it's racist, in response to the Reform Caucus and their lawsuit trying to get a new election in hopes, in their mind, of getting a new president to unseat Christian. The offer is out there. If he wants to do an interview, we'd obviously love his side of things.